Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Closing Bell on the Stock Movers Podcast. The companies making moves at the close of U.S. trading with Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, Romaine Bostick, and Scarlet Fu.
Let's get to the number one gainer in the S&P 500. We're talking about NRG Energy. Man, that name is up about 26%, so pretty much holding on to all of its gains of the day. This is after agreeing to acquire the nat gas-powered assets from LS Power Equity Advisors. That was about a $12 billion deal, including debt. So really some outperformance there. Microchip, we saw the semiconductor space up overall, but Microchip up about 10% here. Also a top gainer in the NASDAQ 100. Citi raising the firm's price target on Microchip to 55 from 50 and keeping a buy rating on the shares, saying the company posted a decent quarter but guided revenue up 8% quarter over quarter. That's the highest revenue growth in the sector. Again, the analysts over at Citi putting out a note. Apple, I mentioned the Mag 7 as a whole rallying in today's session. Apple up about 6%. This is after the Wall Street Journal came out and said the company is considering raising iPhone prices, so that was certainly a catalyst. And Shopify, just had to mention, up almost 14%. This is after the NASDAQ announced late Friday after the close that the company would replace MongoDB in the NASDAQ 100 prior to market open on May 19th. So a bunch of gainers here. Over to Matthew Miller.
I'm looking at the losers today, and for much of the day, Newmont mining was at the bottom of the list of the S&P 500. I don't think it closed as the biggest loser, but with gold down in the last three trading sessions, about $200, you could see why Newmont would sell off. Cigna and CVS are both owners of PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, which means they are the middleman that Donald Trump was talking about this morning. He said he wants to cut out the drug industry middleman as a way to reduce drug costs, and as a result, those shares getting sold off pretty hard. They were, at varying points, Cigna certainly the biggest loser of the day on the S&P 500. And then Kroger, I saw, was a big loser today. In fact, the grocer sold off the most in 2 years at one point today. They don't own a PBM anymore. They have in the past owned their own PBM and partnered up with PBM. You can still get pharmaceuticals at Kroger. They still have a pharmacy there. But in general, President Trump has been talking about bringing down the price of groceries. And I love the way he says that, groceries. And Kroger was not a beneficiary of that today.
How does one otherwise say it?
He just enunciates each and every syllable, groceries. And I just appreciate it. I don't know if it's a New York thing. Is that a normal thing for New Yorkers?
Groceries?
Groceries? I don't know. I say groceries. I grew up in New York. Anywho, to the bond market we go. You're seeing a sell-off pretty much all across the curve. That two-year yield is up by 11 basis points, closing right at that 4% level. Here's kind of the why as we re-rate the Fed cuts. You're looking at swaps tracking the upcoming central bank meeting, showing just 56 basis points of easing by December. And that's down a whopping 75 basis points from last week. So we've taken out about almost one full cut. But again, it all feels like it's TBD. That front end is very much where all the whippy action is going to be, guys.
And this gets to an idea of whether the market rally, the equity market rally, is also a bit of TBD. We talk about this idea of a new bull market sort of taking a foot, at least for the NASDAQ 100. And you look at what rose today, a 7% gain in this Philadelphia Semiconductor Index. But at the same time, you had that 7% gain in Dow Transport. So you had a lot of sectors today that, at least in the eyes of investors, seem to be getting more of a long-term reprieve, whether it's chip stocks, whether it's in the travel space or in the consumer durable space.
Absolutely. There's still a lot of uncertainty, right? I was thinking about what David Bahnsen just told Alix and Romaine about how before, when you had 145% tariffs on Chinese imports, that was basically a trade embargo. Now you have some trade. It's not back to what it was. So something is better than nothing, but there's still a lot of question marks, and it's not like companies are going to be rushing to offer new updated guidance.
Yeah, well, in terms of guidance, we're going to get some reads on inflation this week, CPI and PPI. And so we'll see whether or not the Fed's going to be in a little bit of a trickier situation, because even if the tariffs aren't as onerous as it seems to be going, especially when we look at what's going on between U.S. and China, we are going to be in a higher tariff environment. And so what does that mean overall for inflation longer term?
I'm just curious, though, too. I mean, we're also going to get some earnings reports this week, including from Walmart. I think we get a lot more in terms of the retail space the following week. But you do get some companies that are going to have some insights into what's going on with trade and whether they were impacted, like a Walmart, like a Cisco, and a few others that I'm forgetting. I think Birkenstock is in there. Oh, Deere. That's the one I was thinking of as well.
The Stock Movers Podcast from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.